Welcome to the March 13th edition of the PFF Forecast. We are back together again in studio, and we have a great episode here. We're going to decide what the name that we're going to call our podcast listeners are. We've got some great candidates. We're going to discuss Calvin Ridley, pour a little out for listener of the podcast, I guess, Calvin Ridley. And we're going to talk about some of the crazy moves. We got a little Carson Wentz action. The Deshaun Watson thing, where might he end up? Hopefully it's the Seahawks, so I can hate them even more. We're going to talk about the Cowboys and a lot of interesting things there with what the Cooper trade kind of stood for, what we think of Dak Prescott. We're going to dive into free agency and the draft with the cornerback class and talk about where value might be either free agency or in the draft. We're going to do some Ballsack or just whack. And we've got recommendations. I've got a full review of food I ate in Vegas. It's going to be fantastic. Let's rock. Where do you want to start here? Should we start with the name of people listening to the podcast? We had some good and some bad submissions.
I think so. Let's look at some, and I'm going to attach names to some because I think that they're pretty cool. Adam Candy, who is a veteran radio host, TV host in the sports betting space, came up with tail creatures. Remember I called Aaron Donald a tail creature during the last podcast? Yeah. I actually like that one. I feel like, though, there's a little entendre that we don't want to like.
You think there's a little double entendre there? Is that what you're interesting?
So if somebody drafting Malik Willis is chasing tail, I don't think we really want to like mix those together.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I think there's a real there's a real difference in the type of tail you're chasing there. I do like tail creatures is a very good submission we can't use.
Yes, very good submission we can't use. Forecasters, that seems like a pretty
down the middle.
Like somebody comes up to me at the comments like, "Hey, I'm a forecaster." It's not like, "You want a job?" So I don't know about that. Caster, "Hey, I'm a caster." That is a little bit closer to like, "Oh yeah, you listen to our show." I don't have to double think it.
But that also if you're a caster, it kind of sounds like you're playing.
It's gonna be me tonight on the court.
Yeah. It also sounds like you're just telling people that in a really lame way that you do podcasts. Yeah. I'm a caster. Okay, I'm a caster. Bro. Sick.
Did you have any that you liked?
I think the one that I liked is the one that I think we're gonna have to go with, and it's the Syndicate. You remember the Syndicate. And the great thing about the Syndicate and just saying, I'm a part of the Syndicate is it kind of pokes a little bit of fun at, it's not taking ourselves too seriously. Yes. There are obviously real betting syndicates out there. They're a closely knit group of bettors who ride or die with one another.
Yeah.
I feel like that's what we are.
Yeah.
And it to me, it encapsulates what's great about our listeners, which is that they enjoy betting and being a part of it, and yet they don't have to take themselves too seriously, even though they are rigorous and they care about making smart mathematical based decisions.
Yeah, I like that. So hey, you come up to one of us at or somewhere, or this is the most frequent one, and my dad will be on an airplane. He's sits next to somebody, starts a conversation with them, which, by the way, that's the difference between myself and my father.
You're not starting conversations with people on an airplane?
Blinders guy. When I was younger and a cute girl sat next to me on the plane, yeah, I would. But
oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I've never done that.
When I was not married, obviously.
I also don't think I've ever had a cute girl sit next to me on a plane.
Yeah, it was. I think that it's probably 2 out of 100. Probably.
Here's the distribution for me about people that I get sat next to on a plane: extremely overweight human being, or human being that is eating some pungent, gross food. That number is over 100.
Well, because here's the difference between you and me, though. When I was in grad school, back college, grad school, all those different times, when I was I didn't have enough money to buy a nice first class ticket or even Comfort Plus or something. Yeah. So I was in coach. Mm-hmm. And the type of women I would find attractive were very comfortable in coach, right?
Oh,
like,
I see.
You see what I'm saying?
Okay.
Whereas like nowadays, both you and I, like we'll upgrade to first class, upgrade to, and we don't upgrade to, and I'm a bigger guy. I need it for the leg room, but like we don't upgrade to first class because we need it necessarily. But the person sitting next to us might.
That's true. Maybe that's what, because
you are a person of class. When's the last time you flew? Well, when's the last time the proportion, like over time, the rolling average of the number of flights you've taken included more than 50% like coach, not even comfort plus, like coach or worse, 50%.
Last time
that dipped below. Because I know you've flown coach before, but I'm talking about
absolutely.
like when is the proportion? When has the proportion not been?
I mean, I'm trying to think of, so the reason that I don't fly coach a lot is that I've racked up like miles and status because I've done long distance with my girlfriend for a long time. And so I've done like New York to LA flights, like a lot. And so I've been lucky because when you rack up status and then I don't upgrade with money a lot. Like I just
that's the same with me too. Right. I just upgrade with miles.
I just get I'll either get complimentary upgrade or throw a few miles people's way. So it has been a little while. I will say this though, I took a red eye this past week, and I don't know if I've ever dreaded a red eye as much as I did this because it was in the middle of the week, and I was like, "This is gonna kill me." And I got onto the plane. And I was so tired. I've never been this tired. And I actually slept.
I have too. Both of my last 2 return trips from Boston and then Minneapolis. And granted, both times I had too much to drink the night before.
Oh, so that'll do it.
And like that, like I actually think I wore the sweatshirt on one of them. I don't think I took my hood off in both flights.
Wow.
So like I boarded the plane looking super fresh.
The key for me was that I just woke up really early that morning, and so I was toast. So the syndicate.
So anyway, my dad, people will come up to my dad in airports and be like, "Oh, who are you?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, my son works PFF." He's like, "Oh, what's his name?" And then they'll say my name, and they're like, "Oh, I listen to the podcast." Like my dad, like every flight sits next to somebody who listens to the podcast, and now they'll have a way to refer to themselves. Yeah.
Remember the syndicate.
I'm part of the syndicate.
Yeah, there you go. Well, welcome everybody. Part of the syndicate. Also part of the syndicate is Calvin Ridley, who, I mean, everyone knows the story by now, but basically placed a parlay in Florida.
A few parlays. Like, wasn't just a few parlays.
A few, but no one places one parlay.
No.
Okay, so let's not pretend that he's like a degenerate, addicted gambler. Okay, he placed many parlays, just like every human on the planet. While not with the team, remember this was after he left the team. He was in Florida where gambling is legal. It wasn't as if he was, going illegally through some bookie, and has been suspended for an entire season. I'll just say this. I think this is absolutely freaking ridiculous. And I think we've talked about it a few times. The point of the rule against wanting players to bet on games is we don't want them influencing the integrity of the game. Maybe I'm blind here, but I'm having a hard time figuring out how Calvin Ridley in fucking Jacksonville, Florida, wherever the hell he was able to impact the integrity of the Atlanta Falcons games that were happening.
Well, okay, so there's a few issues. So I'm going to explain this, I think, my reasoning for why I think. Now, the size of the suspension, I think, is the biggest issue.
Yes, right? That is the biggest issue.
But I absolutely believe he should be suspended. I do think he should be suspended for a length of time that I think he should be suspended for a length of time that would basically rule out that he could ever bet on a game he'd be involved in. Right. So the issue. So
what do you mean by that?
Well, so if he placed a bet in November, so he technically could have come back on the team and influenced the game he bet on. Right, because he could have bet on like a game of the year or futures game or something, or bet on a future, like, and been involved and come back to the team because he wasn't out for the season.
Did he do that?
Well, no, but he could. Like, that's the whole problem. Is like the whole issue is, and I'm going to get back to the reasoning here. So NFL players cannot bet on NFL games. They can bet on, I believe, they can bet on other professional sports games. Mm-hmm. People who work in the NFL, so NFL Network, people who work on teams can't bet on any sports. And the reason for that is that they have access to information on other leagues by being a part of that cohort that would give them an unfair advantage. Mm. So my big issue is as a member of the Atlanta Falcons, he probably had, like, take away the fact that he could influence a game.
Okay.
Like,
yeah, I'm taking that away because there was no chance he was influencing.
But he could have influenced the game. Like, he wasn't on IR. He wasn't out for the season. He was out for that week.
Could have, but did not.
Yeah, but I don't think that should be, because your choice to come back or not could also be influenced by what you've bet. Or, like, there's just all this there's these cans of worms that, like, you open up when you allow players to bet. Now, again, the fact that his suspension is longer than what we've seen for domestic violence abusers, for other situations that are causing not just him but other people real harm, that's the black eye for the league. I don't think that suspending him for an entire season is that egregious, but the league needs to make sure. And I think that right now they're falling short of this. The league needs to make sure that every single dime that is made off of gambling, especially the proliferation of legal gambling, is part of league revenue and is shared in the proportions that all other league revenue are with the players. Because what looks bad, and this is, like, in my opinion, and I don't mean ignorant as in, like, oh, you're stupid, but, like, the most ignorant thing I saw on Twitter that day, or even, like, Mike Florio, whomever, was, oh, the league is profiting off of gambling and the players can't profit off of themselves. It's like, no, the league is the players. Yeah, the players are part of the league. Now, there are, and I asked Brad Spielberg about this, but there are aspects of there are gambling monies that the league is taking in that is not part of league revenue, and that's the problem. Is that players are not taking part in this explosion of league popularity.
Is it all of it, or is it a certain?
Like, right now, I believe it is carved in where if it is bet on or near stadia within the league, then it's league revenues. Everything else, so for me, question,
but like the whatever DraftKings and FanDuel are paying to be official sports books of the NFL, those kinds of things are not.
I do not believe so. Now, here's the question:
what about, like, ad revenue?
So I believe ad revenue is indirectly going to the players because you have the TV deals, and then the TV deals essentially when the TV deal happens, it's the network that's paying the NFL, but they're making a gamble on themselves, saying we could raise this money in ad revenues if we just had your games. So essentially, those deals are going to be big because they anticipate being able to generate
money,
ad revenue from. So again, that's the players benefiting from gambling. I think from the integrity issue, the Calvin Ridley thing is on the borderline because he wasn't playing, but there are still enough ways where you can have influence over what's happening in order to to me, I just think you have to err on the side of no gambling for active players. I
agree with you 100%. The issue for me is not that I wouldn't suspend him, but that 16 games, suspending the guy for the entire season. Now, your point around what he could have done, agree, right? He did not do that. This was not some malicious, contrived, I'm going to go influence a game. And that matters. That definitely does matter. Okay? And you can send a message without suspending a guy who, look, I'm just going to say this. Like, we're going to talk about Deshaun Watson here. If my team or a GM or a head coach signed Deshaun Watson, like, I would think of them differently. I would be, I cannot root for him because of, a preponderance of allegations that, if you have that many people that are saying the same thing, yada, yada, yada. Okay. To think about the difference between willfully putting someone in a position like that versus someone like Calvin Ridley, who's ignorantly putting the league in a somewhat, compromised position. And saying those two things are not it just is ridiculous to me. And so suspend him for 2 or 3 games, make an example of him that way. And you pointed this out on Twitter, I think, and this is the best part of this whole thing. They caught him.
Yeah.
They caught him because legalized betting allows you to regulate and know these things so much more easily. And that's the win.
Yeah.
The win for the league is We found a player that was betting on it. We found it early, and we were able to nip it in the bud.
And that was the whole thing. It was a recommendation that we had probably a few months ago, which was Bad Sport. If you want, that's still up on Netflix. It is a documentary where the first episode was Heddick. I can't remember Heddick's last name, but he was the Arizona State player who was getting paid $20,000 a game to throw games. And one of the real reasons he got caught was because the majority of this money was being wagered onshore in Nevada, and they have systems for that, right? Like the more of betting. So everybody's sort of saying, oh, this is where it gets like shady, and this is legalized betting. You know, the proliferation of legalized betting is really going to fuck stuff up. And it's like, well, in this particular case, I think it increases the integrity of the game. I mean, our friend Rufus Peabody was one of the people who was studying when Tim Donaghy was fixing games as a referee for the NBA. Like the more people you have in the gambling space, the more that you can spot irregularities within what's happening. The more that this stuff is offshore, the more that this stuff is on, local bookies who are doing things illegally, the less likely we are to figure out things before they get too big. So, and again, like this is not the first time this has happened. So Josh Shaw, who was a defensive back for the Cardinals at the time, he was placed on injured reserve in August 25th of 2019. He placed a 3-team parlay, including a bet against his Cardinals team at a sportsbook run by Caesars Entertainment in Vegas. And they found him, and so Goodell suspended him for all of 2019, which he was on injured reserve, couldn't come back, and then all of 2020, he's now on one of these USFL teams that's starting in about a month. So like this is actually less onerous than that one, but again, it's one of those where the league found a way. Because I agree, I think you would suspend him for a year. You set his clock back a year. You don't ruin his career, but you make it really tough for him to assume his career. So every other player who's thinking about placing a bet, even in situations, and I bet it went through Ridley's head, I'm not playing. Yeah. I can't even watch the games. I'm doing all this. And again, I have a ton of empathy for him because he left the team because he was suffering through mental illness. Yeah. Like this, I feel bad for him because this is just another thing on his plate. Yep. But it shows everybody within the league, whether you're Patrick Mahomes, who's playing every game and you have the most influence over every game, or your practice squad guy on injured reserve who has influence over nothing, betting is not. Now, in classic
the problem is that you should also be sending the message that soliciting acts of sex during massages are also really wrong.
NFL, in a classic move for them, is even when they did the right thing.
How about that?
Even when they did the right thing, they uncovered things they were doing poorly. Yeah, right. That's the NFL fair. In a nutshell.
Okay. Before we move on to some of the other things that are happening in the NFL, like the Cowboys sending away Amari Cooper and the Chargers trading for Khalil Mack, go grab a PFF subscription, get 25% off with promo code FORECAST, FORECAST. We should probably change that promo code to Syndicate because the Syndicate, we're going to go share all of our subscriptions with everybody. Go send your best friends a little heads up. Get them a subscription for 25% off. You get all of PFF's locked article content, NFL draft guide, which is going to be getting upgraded and updated very soon with new information and new rankings. Completely unlocked the mock draft simulator. Get our 2022 free agent rankings, drafts, data, grades, and more. Plus, if you get an elite subscription, you'll be set up for both fantasy and betting for next year. 25% off with promo code FORECAST. Khalil Mack to the Chargers. What'd you make of that?
It's another example of the salary cap mattering. Rookie deal quarterback having matters. It also, to me, shows how I don't know. Like, to me, it shows, like, again, like the most valuable thing in the NFL is a very good quarterback on a rookie deal.
Yeah.
And having the cap space to do that, having the cap space to capitalize on that means you don't have to give up that much. They gave up a second and a sixth for him. Khalil Mack, his contract is like $30 million a year for the next 3 years, but they can get out of it at any time with no dead money. It's a very good deal for the Chargers. And I think, I think they're plus 350 now. I got him at plus 350, plus 400. I got him at plus 350. And then the Denver Broncos acquired Russ, and I felt like an idiot. And then I took him back at 400 again, and then they got Khalil Mack, and now I believe they're back down to 350. I'm being suckered in here because I think unlike other Chargers teams, this one, like, this Chargers team isn't stupid, I think. And that's the difference between other Chargers teams that had tons of talent and this one here, which has tons of talent, but I also think is going to give themselves every chance to win.
Look, if they could somehow get out of Lombardi's offense, which just makes my eyes bleed, I would place a sizable bet on them at plus 350, even though it would be locking up some cash there. The Broncos are getting a ton of love, and obviously we spent a ton of time on our last podcast. If you haven't listened, go listen, with Ben Baldwin talking about Russ and the Cowboys. There is the simple fact that he is coming to a new team, a new first-time head coach is coming there. There are a lot of unknowns. The Broncos could end up being absolutely fantastic. They could go sign Von Miller, back and have that great edge rush. They have some solid players on defense, Justin Simmons on the back end, solid offensive line, a lot of weapons. But, the Chargers have an incredible set of superstar players. You think about Keenan Allen, Mike Williams. Jalen Guyton is a really good third wide receiver. They stacked their offensive line last year. They rebuilt it. They have a ton of talent on the defensive side of the ball, and you have arguably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. So, to me, it's ridiculous that the Chargers are not at least the same odds as the Broncos. I think that is patently ridiculous.
Can we? So somebody, and I was doing a show with Soren Petro, friend of the podcast,
member of the syndicate,
and some member of the syndicate, and somebody was like, "Well, don't you advise building your offense first? Because this is a defensive move,
right?"
And I went back and looked, no, this is what makes me happy about the Chargers. If you have bets on them, they get Herbert, right? A lot of us didn't like Herbert. I wasn't a big fan of Herbert.
Yep.
Herbert gets out there. Now they go 7-9. They started, 3-9, and then they had 4-game winning streak. They fire their head coach. They bring Staley in. Last year's offseason was signing Keenan Allen to an extension, signing Jared Cook, signing Brian Balaga, signing Corey Linsley, drafting Rashawn Slater, getting Austin Eckler on a reasonable deal to be their running back. And then that was the first. That's the first shove of chips, and then Herbert takes that. And granted, again, they only went 9-8. The Chargers jokes notwithstanding, but the entire year was Justin Herbert proving that with that kind of support, he could be a great quarterback. And the Lombardi thing is the troubling thing about this. But we all believe that Justin Herbert is it, right? And now it's coming back. Because really, ultimately, if they make the playoffs, let's think about a secondary situation. Let's say they can stop the run against the Raiders and they finish 9-7-1.
Yep.
What was the Bengals record this year?
Right.
10-7, right? If they go into the playoffs as the Chargers
and they go to the Super Bowl,
I'm not saying they were, but I'm just saying it's not as far-fetched, right? So what do? They come back and say, okay, offense is good. We're going to keep Mike Williams around. They have the luxury, by the way. This is again, and I bring everything back to the Chiefs. That's the Sammy Watkins signing. $20 million a year for Mike Williams is too much, but it's a rounding error to this team that had the most salary cap space among every team in the NFL. And then they go and they get Khalil Mack. I guarantee you they're going to shore up the interior of the defensive line, whether that be Sebastian Joseph Day in free agency Jordan Davis in the draft. They're going to get a linebacker with a clue, and they're going to shore up the secondary. Depth was an issue for them. But guess what? You have money to acquire depth. Well, we're going to talk about cornerback today. There's a ton of guys there. Yep. And so and again, this is one of the reasons why I'm bullish on the Chargers. They're doing it the right way. You draft a quarterback, you start over, you give him offense to make him prove it, and then you give him defense to help him get over the top. And that's a pretty good approach. Yeah. And you have a coach who uses all 4 downs.
I love investing in superstars that have disproportionate value given the team they're on.
Yeah.
This is what we saw.
More utility for one team than another.
This is what we saw with Von Miller and the Broncos. He had almost negative utility to the Broncos, who just needed a better draft pick. And he didn't want to play for a shitty team. He shouldn't have had to. The guy's a stud. Comes over to the Rams, re-energizes a 93 PFF grade, eats people for lunch in the playoffs, and is a huge reason why they won the Super Bowl. Khalil Mack over there getting PFF grade of 92 for the Bears. He and Akeem Hicks over there trying to put the team on their back. Well, Matt Nagy flushes it down the toilet.
Nick Foles is getting sacked every third play.
The difference in Khalil Mack playing for the Bears versus Khalil Mack playing for the Chargers is absolutely massive, and that's why this trade, it was so fantastic. And it's, look, I hate to be the person that's on the Chargers bandwagon.
Yeah.
I think they're the most talented team in the division.
Yeah, I think
they on paper, coaches aside, and you don't overweigh quarterback, too dramatically, because I think that's where you get to
from
the Chiefs,
2 to
right?
53. It's either them or Denver,
and it's them in my opinion.
And I think it's them.
It's the Chargers,
yeah.
And when you then take in head coach, and this is interesting, okay? You take in head coach. I know Andy Reid is amazing. It wasn't great last year. It wasn't. It was not great last year. I will take I will put Brandon Staley up against anybody. Where I am concerned is you look at Brandon Staley's a defensive guy. The offense is really important. What Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy can do for the offense in Kansas City, to me, is the one silver bullet.
Yeah.
That combination with Mahomes, the ability, they have so much continuity there with Kelsey and Hill. And obviously they have questions, a second pass catcher is a real issue. And that's why the Chargers are so tempting here, because they have the better, more talented team. The one difference is whether they can get over the hump from an offensive scheme perspective. Because remember that, you brought up the Raiders game. The only reason that game was even close is because Justin Herbert is converting fourth and N plus
He's overcoming
10,
a lot, yeah.
and N is anywhere from 5 to 10. 15, fourth and 20, fourth and 22. The guy's insane, but you can't ask him to do that and make the playoffs and then go on a run.
The AFC South is the other division for the AFC West, which again, if you're looking at, you could look at it one, and I'm gonna finish this with 2 different points. When you're thinking about betting. The AFC South is the division for the AFC West, right? So all 4 of those teams get the Jaguars, the Titans, the Texans, and the Colts. I would not bet a win total under on any team in that division other than maybe the Raiders. But even the Raiders, I think, have too good of a quarterback to fade that much.
As of now.
Yeah, and then the
Carr
NFC
could end up in Indy.
Right. And then the off the 9th away game that the Chargers have is against the Falcons. So I'll just say.
Can I just tell everyone here? So, before the podcast, we were figuring out what we were going to talk about. And Eric had written down the Matt Ryan restructure. Yeah. And I was like, let's not talk about Matt Ryan. And we spent literally 5 minutes swear words every other word with respect to the Falcons. We're not talking about this podcast.
They are not the PFF Falcons anymore. I am out on the Falcons. Here's
selling. And the Chargers. It's the PFF Chargers.
Here's the last thing I'll say. And this is, again.
You promise?
Yes. These are the top, let's say, 6 teams let's do 8. 8 teams in cap space this year. Colts, Jets just drafted a guy on the rookie deal. Dolphins, quarterback on a rookie deal. Seahawks, right? Seahawks and Colts are kind of in the same area. Jaguars just drafted a guy on a rookie deal.
Yep.
Bengals guy on a rookie deal. Raiders, and then the Bears just drafted a guy on a rookie deal. The fact is, it is so and if you're looking for teams to bet on, you're looking for a team. Let's say you want to do some alt overs, right? You maybe don't want to bet the Jets over 5.5 or whatever, but maybe you want to bet them over 10.
No.
Plus 400 or something.
No, I don't.
Because the thing is everybody's looking for the next Bengals, right? Everybody's looking for the next Bengals, and it's going to be one of those teams. It's I don't know which one.
Does there have to be a next Bengals?
There doesn't have to be, but I'm saying it's going to come from the group of teams. And last year we talked ourselves into a couple bets on the Jags for the same reasons. Your whole offensive nucleus is on rookie deals, and they're all talented. And if you could just have a coach with a clue, you might actually have a chance to win this godforsaken division. The same thing's true, right?
Mm-hmm. No, it's a really good point. We are going to talk about a team that doesn't have a quarterback on a rookie deal in just 1 second. Before we do, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but if you're betting on anything, it's probably hoops, whether it be the NCAA tournament or the NBA. By the way, at the end of the podcast, I will talk about my March Madness secret for all of you. I'm going to help you out a little bit. It's not what you think. Don't worry. But go to DraftKings Sportsbook, official sports betting partner of the NBA, and use promo code PFF. Bet just $1 on any team. Get $150 in free bets if they win. It is that simple. And if sports betting is not legal in your state, go download the DraftKings Daily Fantasy app and play for huge cash prizes and all of their basketball contests. Great way to spend a Saturday, Sunday, hell, Tuesday night, whatever it is. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now, promo code PFF. Bet just $1 on any NBA team to win. Get $150 free dollars in bets if they win. That's promo code PFF at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 and over. Minimum age and location requirements vary by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. And state-specific responsible gaming resources. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Okay. It's very interesting to talk about the Chargers. And as you listed out, all those teams with the most cap space, it's not rocket science. You have a quarterback on a rookie deal, it gives you a ton of flexibility. You have a really good quarterback on a rookie deal, in other words, not Mitch Trubisky, and you can do some really cool things. But then questions arise when you have a quarterback that is maybe teetering. Is this guy top 10? Is he top 5? Right? Not Josh Allen, not Justin Herbert, but someone like a Dak Prescott.
Yes.
And we look at the Dallas Cowboys, and the Dallas Cowboys just had to trade Amari Cooper to the Browns for a 5th-round pick. And everyone on Twitter immediately shits themselves and goes, Amari Cooper for a 5th-round pick? Are you effing kidding me? This guy's an all-pro wide receiver for a 5th-round pick? And you try and explain, you go, look, $20 million, they're trying to clear, so they don't have cap space. And people go, well, that's interesting. Why don't they have any cap space? And you go, look, and you go to overthecap.com and you go, okay, well, here are their biggest cap hits this coming year. DeMarcus Lawrence, Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott.
We tried.
Who could have foreseen?
We tried.
Who could have foreseen that Ezekiel Elliott having a cap hit of $18 million
but it
would come back to bite them?
It isn't even that. And this is the thing that people have to realize about when you restructure deals. And I thought Jason Fitzgerald, a friend of the show, member of the syndicate, when he was on, but he has this podcast, the Over the Cap podcast, where he talked about this really well. He said, look, every time you restructure a player's deal, you are buying, he is going to be on your team in future years. And so like restructuring a guy like Chris Jones is like, whatever, he's one of the best players on their team. So it's fine to have him on the team. Restructuring a guy like Frank Clark is dumb because now you're hanging on. He's on your team. Like he's there.
Yep.
Like you don't want to have him. And like that's like the point with a guy like, and again, I don't know the history of the Zeke restructures and everything, but like the point of Zeke isn't that his salary cap hit is $18 million. It's that if you cut him this year, pre-June 1, you incur a $30 million cap hit. Like he's on your team no matter what. He is cheaper to keep than to cut. And like, and even if you do the June 1 thing, post June 1, it's still like you basically, you don't get any cap savings. You're basically just getting rid of him for the right to sort of split his money from one year to the next. And again, like that's the problem. It's not even because like the cap hit for Mack we talked about, it's big, but you can get rid of him whenever you want. Cooper's the same way. They could
restructure if they wanted to. They could have tried to sign him once he was cut, but now they have all these options because they're a competitive team. He's gonna play for them now, coming from a team that didn't want him anymore. And it's like you have all these options. To your point with Zeke, it would be a loss cap savings of negative $12 million this year if they cut him. Next year they would save under $5 million. So they're saving, was it $16 million with Amari Cooper with this move? But like would have been way easier. And this is why it's so funny. And I think about how these decisions are made. There's no doubt in my mind that Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys brass think that Ezekiel Elliott is worth more than Amari Cooper.
Well, it isn't even that. It's that.
But how ridiculous is that?
But it isn't even that. I don't even think that that's true anymore. I think that it's.
You think they actually would rather, if you gave them the
choice. They don't have a choice.
I know they don't have a choice. I know. But I'm saying, do you think they even understand it at this point?
I think that when they signed Zeke to when they signed him, they believed he was more valuable than Cooper. And then I think only somebody who's completely buried in the sand believes that anymore. But that's the whole point of this whole, like, where you have to have reasonable principles to stand on, because if you don't, you can get stuck in the, you know, and again, like I said this on, I can't remember when, but like the last time that the second to last time Jerry Jones won a Super Bowl, Emmitt Smith sat out for the first 2 games of the next year wanting a new contract, and they went 0-2. And then they signed him back, and he won league MVP, and they won a Super Bowl. Jerry's been around that long to think that is what that's what it is. And if you don't have guiding principles, which is don't pay, like, and again, like, we're not trying to steal running backs' money here. There's a cap, and we have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it's just like you have guiding principles, right? Don't buy at the top of the market. Don't buy positions that don't offer value, because you're going to be stuck with situations like this. And again, it's like, it doesn't even matter what they think, because they have no choice.
Should we be worried about the Cowboys this year?
So I put out a poll yesterday because I wanted to know what people thought, because it was sort of, we've been back and forth. I think if you would have polled us after 2018, I think both of us would have said
pay Dak.
No, 18. I think all of us would have said that Dak is sort of more in that, like, Kirk Cousins kind of, like.
Yeah, sorry, I thought you meant after last year.
Yeah, 18. I think 18. Remember that Monday Night Football game against the Titans where Dak overthrew Amari, and Amari walked back to the huddle and like, fuck me, or something like that. And like, Dak was struggling. And then 2019 was sort of like Deshaun Watson's 2020, where it wasn't a great team, but this quarterback's dealing. Like, you know, in the regular season, he was second in the NFL in WAR. And like, and you know, so we're all like, okay, he's shown that top end ability. 2020, he gets injured. They still pay him the deal, which is interesting, right? Like, why did they wait? And now, so my poll said, where does Dak Prescott sit on the worthy of a market level veteran QB deal? So basically, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, they all make basically the same amount of money.
About $40 million a year.
Is he worth that? 55% of respondents said he's right on that line, which is exactly what I believe. And 17% said he was below that line, so he's basically Kirk Cousins. And then 29% said above the line. So, like, this is just variance.
Can we do an above the line list?
Sure, let's do an above the line list. We might not even get to corners today, but that's fine.
Yeah, it's okay. We can save that. Above the line list. These are quarterbacks we would pay, essentially quarterbacks that you would, give them a new contract.
I would never trade.
Never trade, but give them that new contract, right?
Yeah.
Which, if that basically means you're paying them, unless it's some mid-range guy, you're paying them that market level $40-ish million a year. By the way, Patrick Mahomes averaging 45, Josh Allen 43, Dak Prescott 40, Deshaun Watson 39, Russell Wilson 35, Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers 33.5. We believe Aaron Rodgers obviously going to set the market now with Green Bay. Interestingly enough, Kirk Cousins at 33, Carson Wentz now the quarterback of the Commanders. We didn't talk about that in this podcast because we would die laughing, and there's just no point to talk about such stupidity. So Mahomes, Allen, we agree with them too, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Who's next on your list?
Mahomes, Allen, Rodgers, Herbert, Burrow, and Wilson.
Burrow and Wilson.
So from there, and this is where I find the line, and this is where these are the quarterbacks who I would pay, but I would understand a hesitancy to pay him, because I'm going to talk about this in a second.
Because the notable one that you're missing is Lamar.
This is the line. To me, there are 3 quarterbacks on the line. Mm-hmm. Lamar, Dak, and Matt Stafford.
Oh.
So here's my point
about Kyler?
I don't think so. Like,
really?
I don't think Kyler Murray generates the drive success necessary. Like, I think Murray, I don't think your offense is successful enough with Murray on a drive for drive standpoint. Like, I put him, so like the next tranche of quarterbacks I have, and you could go to pff.com/power NFL power rankings if you want to see where we view them in the point spread. The next group of quarterbacks for me is Carr, Cousins, Ryan, Murray, Tannehill.
Carr, Cousins, Ryan, Murray, Tannehill.
Murray's the one that's tricky because there's clearly upside there. Yeah, but
I have 2 for you that I'm adding to the list. So your list was Mahomes, Allen, Wilson, Rodgers,
Burrow.
And Burrow. Okay. And Herbert.
And Herbert, yes.
And I'm in agreement with all of those. maybe I'm feeling generous today. I don't know what it is. Look, I'm not adding Jimmy G. I'm not that generous. But
the G in Jimmy is for generous, by the way.
I am paying Lamar Jackson, and I am paying Kyler Murray. And I'm not sure it's necessarily in that order. Kyler Murray has Cliff Kingsbury's offense. Now, it may be that he is always going to be tied to Cliff Kingsbury's offense, and we'll never totally see. And maybe Cliff Kingsbury, I think he got, a little more creative last year. But the guy, both those guys have, and this is how I think about this line. Do these guys have singularly great abilities that can win you a game or a string of games in the playoffs and win a Super Bowl? And Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray both have that. Now, I agree with you that they're on the end of that list. The ones that are on the end of that list for me are Wilson and Burrow, who I actually feel are very similar, similarly ranked in that list. I would rather pay Burrow, but both of them take too many sacks. And then Lamar and Kyler, because we haven't seen the consistency of a passing offense, but I'm not sure it's their fault.
Yeah.
And both of them have unique abilities that, well, it's not the Mahomes, Allen, Herbert ability, which is I'm both athletic and I can throw balls literally on a rope 45 yards down the field from the opposite hash. Like, there are still things that they can do. So I'm adding those guys.
And I'm going to add Kyler to my list of 4 on the line, the Maginot line, if you will. But here's my, and maybe I'm just a prisoner of the moment with Burrow.
Is this the Prescott line, by the way?
Yeah. I might be just a prisoner of the moment with Burrow because they were like, they only went 10-7 and all this stuff. But like, we've been so, over the last decade of quarterback play, have been so not enamored, but inundated with consistency. Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, consistently amazing. Patrick Mahomes, consistently amazing. Peyton Manning, until the last year, consistently amazing. Whatever Phillip Rivers was, he was consistently that. Ben Roethlisberger, until it fell off the cliff, consistently that. And I think that this is where the Tannehill, Cousins, and all that like emerged too. Those guys have been consistent. Derek Carr have been consistently who they are. Mm-hmm. And like, so when we see them, we can see the difference, right? You don't get the pop-ups, right? And so like, I think Mahomes, Rodgers, Allen, Herbert, and then Burrow and Wilson, this is where I might relent on them a little bit, but are consistently above a certain threshold where I'm never asking a question about them anymore.
Yeah.
Prescott and Stafford are the interesting ones where there are going to be, in my opinion, with Dak and the Cowboys, is I would pay Dak, but I would also understand that there are going to be some dark years. There are going to be some years like 2022 where, God, we got to get rid of half the fucking roster and half the year. Like, after he came back from injury, he was dreadful this year. If you take away the Washington Commanders and the Eagles games out of that fucking schedule, he was terrible. And I think Stafford's the same way. I think Stafford, the question is like, with those guys, you're clearly buying a tier below, but the peak can win a Super Bowl. Yeah. And I just don't think the guys beneath that. And so that's my question to Kyler. Can Kyler's peak win a Super Bowl? Maybe.
The answer is yes. The problem is his peaks have all come in the beginning of the season, in the early season. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to give Dak Prescott a pass. We didn't mention Dak in either of those lists, and now I'm going to talk about him. I don't think we should overanalyze a set of games post-injury. Now, what I'm saying is I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt. We saw some really good play before the injury. We saw some really good play before the injury the prior year. He had 3 really good receivers. He had a very good offensive line. All of those things are going to be tested. Lyle Collins on the block. They just traded away Amari Cooper. The problem, though, and this is what you've talked about, when you sign a quarterback to this deal, right, to $40 million a year, and you look at the difference, right, $40 million a year versus, Baker Mayfield's making $8 million a year, Justin Herbert's making $6.5 million a year, Justin Fields is making $5 million a year, right? That $35 million difference is massive, but you gain, if you think about Kirk Cousins, you think about $30 million a year or something like that, 25 a year. You need to be able to produce that 10 to 15 more, right? And that's what you're talking about, that special ability. I'm willing to take a bet on Dak because of how, I mean, it's so hard to hit.
Yeah.
You know, so like you if you take a shot on Dak, what are you taking a shot for? 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
What is a better chance? Dak hitting or you drafting maybe 2 quarterbacks in that time period and one of them hitting?
Yeah.
And I'm going to say Dak hitting is the better chance. But
it comes at a pretty fucking hefty cost.
It comes at a big cost. Now, you also have a competitive team in a weak division. Okay, so that matters. The problem is not paying Dak Prescott. The problem is paying DeMarcus Lawrence and Ezekiel Elliott. That, if they fail, that'll be the problem. It will not be that they pay Dak
So I think the issue, and then the other issue that stems from this is I think the point that you made about Prescott, which is a really good one. What's the length of the deal? 5. That's your quarterback, right? The problem that the Titans made, the problem that the Vikings made, and the problem that, and like actually it's less so than the Raiders. I actually give the Raiders credit for Carr because, you know, and it may be because they drafted him and Tannehill wasn't drafted by the Titans and Cousins wasn't drafted by the Vikings, but they gave Carr a long enough deal where eventually they did compete and eventually his salary was fine, right?
Yep.
And the problem with Cousins, the problem with Tannehill, and now the problem with Ryan, it's just 3 years. If we fail, we'll move on. And what the Vikings have demonstrated is because you backload the deal, but you make it guaranteed. So then now, because you said Cousins' number's 33, it's actually 45 this year.
Right.
Like he's got the biggest cap hit in the league once Rodgers' extension hits. So like the 5-year deal matters to me, right? Because it's like, this is our quarterback. You know, we're burning the boats. And that was always the problem with me with Tannehill. Like, you remember, it was the middle of the pandemic, but when they signed Tannehill to that deal, like, all of our videos were like, okay, how can they get out of this deal? It's like, how, like, what? That's your quarterback, or it's not.
Yep.
In either way, like, just sign this, just franchise tag the guy if he's not your quarterback. And so, like, because the 5 years and the 10 years with Mahomes and the 6 years with Allen, there's enough, like, built-in flexibility where the guy's going to get his, and at some points in those deals, you're going to be getting a steal at quarterback. That's the beauty of having.
That's why you sign him. Yeah. That's why you sign him then, as opposed to waiting. Yeah, it's a good point on Kirk. Cap hit of 45.2 this year.
Vikings over the cap, need to get under the cap.
Let's play a little quarterback musical chairs here before we get to the end of the podcast. Kirk Cousins. Where does he end up?
If I had to guess, because just for the sake of our profession and all this, I want Kwesi Adofo-Mensah to succeed.
So you want him to trade him?
I want him to trade. Like, I think in order of likelihoods, I think they trade. I think they trade him. They let him stay for 45 and just play out a tank year, or they extend him. If they trade him, I think it's probably going to be like Seattle or Indianapolis, because I think the Watson thing is tricky, because the longer the Watson thing happens, and again, we don't like talking about it, it's icky, whatever. The longer the Watson thing, the longer the Watson thing happens, the less options the Vikings have. If they knew he was going to Carolina right away, then they could go talk to the Saints, or they could go talk to whatever. But like, you know,
the fact that all those teams have literally no moral compass and are just like over here trying
to. But Seattle looks like they're out on Watson. It looks like the Colts are out on Watson, obviously in the division. You know, I think that the Vikings.
Seattle right now is the second
highest cap space. Yeah.
Second favorite to sign him.
And I think here's the deal. The Colts, I think Kirk could succeed with the Colts.
Yes. Kirk is going to Seattle, and here's why. Pete Carroll has watched Kirk Cousins throw the ball 15 times a game and not make a peep about it, and has sat there and gone, gosh, I wish I had that quarterback. And so they're going to go trade for him.
If there's any team that doesn't know the difference between an elite quarterback and a merely pretty good quarterback, it's Seattle.
It's Seattle. And they're so excited to bring in a guy that's just going to be happy to make some money to hand the ball off. So they're going to go get Kirk Cousins. Okay, Deshaun Watson, where does he end up?
I think it ends up being Carolina.
I think
maybe so. Tampa Bay is the sneaky one for me.
I think so too, because I think they're the only team so desperate that they're willing to go trade the house for a guy that's asking massage therapists to blow him like 45 times in one summer. Fuck that guy. And I kind of like them going after him, because I haven't rooted for the Panthers in a while, and I won't be rooting for them now.
That team is going to be.
Do you think they trade McCaffrey to the Texans and the Texans continue accumulating talent at the running back position. Derek Carr, where does he end up?
Raiders. That's their.
I think he stays there.
That's their quarterback. Yeah. Derek Carr is the least objectionable of all those guys.
I agree, but here's the interesting thing: the Colts are a team that's trying to compete right now.
Yeah, Carr could be good for them.
What are their options? So if Cousins goes to Seattle, right? They're not going to get Watson. It's Carr if he's on the block, or Jameis or Jimmy G
or Marcus Mariota.
Okay,
Marcus Mariota would be nice in that little.
Let's talk about players that have started games and been successful.
Yeah, I mean, right. I think the problem with the Colts is you just can't keep fucking doing this. But that's the point. They've got it. If they go bring Jimmy G in, and I hope they do, but like if they do that, they're doing the same thing where it's like we got a mid-tier guy. You can at least sell, hey, Derek Carr. Yeah, he's a franchise
good quarterback.
Yeah. But the problem is
it makes sense for the Raiders. The Raiders are not coming close in that division.
The Raiders have to tank.
They just signed a new GM and head coach combo. Restart the whole thing.
Well, the Colts have
and you've got good
space.
Quarterbacks coming up this year.
Yeah, the Colts have the most cap space in the league by $21 million right now. We know that'll change. Most effective cap space by $32 million. Like it's there. Like they have. That would be why I would do the Cousins thing if I were them, because you get the 1 year $35 million. You get the thing is the problem is what Kirk is going to cost in draft capital, because I think people are overestimating what he's going to cost for the same reason they overestimated what Amari Cooper would cost.
Interesting.
If you take on Kirk's full 35 and the Vikings only have to take on the Ted and Den money, then like that's a lot. That's the most valuable thing Kirk's going to do to the Vikings his whole time, which is to recoup a second round pick. But the problem is the Colts don't have a first round pick. So like the trading mechanism for them is going to be harder. So they're going to have to basically buy, like they're going to have to use with their cap space what they can't with draft capital, which is, and so for me, the Colts, like I said, they have to stop doing this. They have to, in my opinion, use their money so that they don't have to use any more draft picks anymore. Because the thing is, they have to draft a quarterback at some point. Like they just can't keep doing this.
Yeah, I agree.
And so 1 year with Cousins to me is almost perfect in that you play it through for a year like they did with Rivers. You let him go. You get the third round comp pick back. You sort of build for the future. And if Cousins is amazing, then go back to the drawing board with him. You're not over levered money wise. So that's the one that one does make sense to me.
For 1 year, who would you rather have as your quarterback, Derek Carr or Kirk Cousins?
Cousins. I think Cousins is slightly better. If money wasn't a factor, I'd take Cousins just slightly.
Both of them kind of like terrified the world's closing in on them in the pocket.
Yeah. It's hard, right?
The answer, it's not hard.
Carr is younger.
The answer can't be Kirk Cousins because if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you need someone with a little bit of like a personality people can rally around.
I know.
Okay.
I know. Derek Carr does have he's corny.
He's corny, but the dude at least has some authenticity to him.
Kirk just is kind of bland.
The answer is Derek Carr.
I'll give Cousins some love for the first time in his life.
Little ball sack or just whack?
Okay, I got a few of these.
Got some good ones for us?
They're pretty good. Okay.
By the way, for those of you that we used to get flack for not introducing segments. This is called ball sack or just whack. Eric reads to me a tweet, and I have to determine whether this is from Ballsack Sports, one of the foremost purveyors of sporting news. You can find them on Twitter at Ballsack Sports, or just whack. In other words, a terrible take that a person has actually tweeted.
Okay. John Stockton is a better player than LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Steph Curry, and it's not close either.
This is the most absurd one that you've thrown my way. So because it's so absurd, who said this?
Nick Adams, USA, which is
because it's so absurd. I don't even think Ballsack would tweet something like that out. So I'm saying it's just
real.
It is real.
And if you follow him, if you follow this person, he honest to goodness has the worst sports takes. He's very political and he just
there's no way, by the way, that your take about John Stockton
is not political.
Is better than LeBron James. It's not racist bullshit.
Yeah. Well, it's the Stockton being anti-mask and all this.
Right.
But here's the one. So I'm just going to read another Nick Adams tweet just to know what you're dealing with if you want to follow him. I called LeBron James yesterday, but it went straight to voicemail. Very odd, because whenever I call MJ, it usually has 6 rings to it. He always comes up clutch answering my calls. Must be LeMickey has 0 real rings. Because the other ones don't count. The one where he dragged the Cleveland Cavaliers through.
He literally took the Cleveland Cavaliers and Kyrie Irving was very good on that team, but they were down 3-1 to the Golden State Warriors, a fucking 73-win Warriors team.
As calculated, he called them La China. Let us down again.
Oh, stop
it!
So that's La China. La China's incredible.
That Twitter handle is a priv.
Okay.
No,
we said priv on the podcast.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Here's one. All right. I gotta open it up. So look at the skill and finesse that Kareem brought to the game. He revolutionized scoring. If you took away the ability for him, LeBron, to dunk. Oh, by the way, LeBron takes so many strays. I don't get it. How good of a scorer would he have really been? It's an impressive feat, but it's apples to oranges at the end of the day.
Oh my God. The funny thing is I could absolutely see some like old motherfucker saying this. Who's it by?
Lou Alcindor. See, that's how you know it's Ballsack. That's how you know it's Ballsack.
Oh, the number of people that were probably totally fooled by that is incredible. Imagine if you took away LeBron's ability to dunk the ball. What would he do? Would he just lay it up? How could he be successful?
Okay, and this is the one that I had to keep from last week because it was, he deleted it. I should have screen grabbed it. It was the one about the intangilytics.
Oh, intangilytics are great.
The one where he draws.
Those are really good, like spider charts.
The spider chart where like the guy's grit was one of the.
And he was serious.
Not apparently, because apparently the tweet doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah, well, he was serious.
He got dragged down by the mob.
The woke mob. Yeah,
the woke mob got him. Just a couple of others that we were dealing with here. Who had this take? He had the same exact. So referring to Carson Wentz, he had the exact same QBR as Russell Wilson last season, and all you had to give up for him was 2/3. That's really isn't that terrible. The contract does suck a bit. That was by Hogs Haven. That one's pretty good. That one's a Cope one.
Yeah.
Here's the play-by-play guy for the Vikings saying, quote, Kirk Cousins is better than Justin Herbert. I don't think it's all that close. Paul Allen. Not the Paul Allen that bought the Microsoft guy, but a clearly dumber one. Yeah. And then lastly.
That's a great take.
And then lastly, this one's actually Ballsack Sports. I don't care if I miss 100 shots in a row. I'm never going to stop shooting the ball. Klay Thompson, I'm finding his rhythm.
I love Klay Thompson, by the way.
Ballsack Sports gets it. I love.
They're fantastic.
Yeah. It makes us all smarter too, because you got to second guess everything you see in tweet.
Yeah, you do.
Ballsack will come get you.
Recommendations. Do you have any this week?
So these are oldies, but I actually went back.
Real quick, while you're composing your thoughts, I meant to mention this. We got a recommendation from a listener.
Oh, okay.
A member of the syndicate.
Nice.
Friend of the podcast, our friend Mehmet, who said, "You guys, I would love to see all of the recommendations." And what I was thinking about, and he was like, because he sent me some good recommendations for Vegas restaurants, and I was thinking,
we made a website with it,
just a Google sheet. We put ours in there, and we have another page where people could enter theirs. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure how to police that. I trust everyone out there, but that would be kind of cool. So maybe we'll do that. Anyways, your recommendations.
So I watched 2 movies this week, and they're oldies.
Nice.
Both had Lawrence Fishburne in them.
Great.
Watched 21 again.
Oh.
I forgot how kind of good that was. One of the reasons I went to see it is I met Jeff Ma in person the other day, which is kind of fun at Sloan. That's who the movie is about. And then this one's kind of a mind fuck 2 years later, but I watched Contagion.
Oh.
And
that was big when
that was 2011 is when it came out. They nailed it.
Yeah.
They nailed it. Yeah. And it's sort of like crazy to think about now. I remember watching it like in like March of 2020 and my wife being like, turn that shit off. And but I actually like watched it yesterday, and I think you should go back, like going back and watching it and realize like how predictable some of our actions were all hour as like collectively is crazy. So go and watch that. Lawrence Fishburne, great in that movie. Great in 21.
Lawrence Fishburne is a good actor. Okay. I promised everyone I'd give a review on places I went to in Vegas. I also have a Let Me Save Your March Madness bracket for you. Okay. So I'm going to tell you what I do every single year. Every single year, I watch not a ton of college basketball. I start watching college basketball towards the end of the season. And what I do is I look for NBA players because I can't watch the garbage that is. You know what I love about college basketball? The small white point guard who's like he's like 1 for 6, 4 assists, 1 turnover, 2 steals. But at the end of the game, the announcers are like, you know what? If it weren't for him, the leadership and the grit that he has, where would this team be without him? And it's like, I don't know, fucking maybe they'd have 10 more points. Anyways, what I do is I find the guys that are going to go in the draft and I become enamored with them. And that's how I end up picking who I have in my bracket. And every year I'm an idiot and I overpick some team that has a good NBA player, but you just can feel that it's not going to work out well. I did that with Kansas a ton back in the day. I'm going to let everyone know the team that I caught myself realizing that I was a fan of, and that's Purdue. They have this guy named Jordan Ivey. He's got range. He's athletic. They have a bunch of tall guys on their team. They're 16-1 right now to win the whole thing. So I'm giving you fair warning, okay? I'm letting everyone know. That's the team that I'm sure is going to lose in the second round to some, team you've never heard of, like Norfolk State.
Richmond.
Yeah, okay? And so you're welcome. Here are the places that I went in Vegas. I'm going to give you some ratings here. I went to a place called Casa Playa. It was a Mexican place at the Encore. Supposedly good. It's on like an Eater, 10 new restaurants to check out in Vegas. It was good, not great. 6 or so out of 10. Guacamole was pretty solid, but like you can't charge $18 for guacamole and not have it be absolutely amazing.
It's gotta be amazing.
Yeah, it's got to be amazing. I did get this really good like short rib kind of taco situation. Very good, not great. Tres Leches was probably the best thing I had there. Second night, I went to a place called Best Friend. Now, Bill Barnwell tweeted out a picture of steak he got there, and a friend of mine sent it to me. And my friend had not been there. I asked him, but had not been there. So I was like, all right, I'm going to go check it out. Roy Choi, who's a famous a famous chef who had a really well-known food truck in LA, has a couple of restaurants in LA that I've been to and are very good, started this restaurant. I had the kimchi fried rice, which was fucking awesome. I also had the steak there. The steak was not as good as I had hoped it was going to be. It was very good, but it wasn't great. The kimchi fried rice, though, was awesome. So I then had to try some of the tacos. They had these short rib tacos. Those were pretty solid. And the dessert was awesome. And the vibe in there was really sweet. It's at Park MGM. It gets like, 7 out of 10, 6.9. Not quite a 7, 6.9. I then had to go to Momofuku.
Oh, that's the main stuff.
And I tweeted about this, but I'm going to let you guys know.
Did you get the fried chicken?
I did not. I don't order fried chicken at restaurants.
I know, it was a joke. Remember when Harris ordered the fried chicken? It was like, what the hell are you doing?
I was like, what?
Love
you,
Mike. But like, you ordered the fried chicken.
So I got truffle ramen, and I was a little hesitant because I was like, I don't know how this is gonna work, but it was awesome. It was absolutely fantastic. It's pricey because it's got truffle in it. It was one of the best dishes that I've had in Vegas, and I went back the next day and got it again. That's how good it was. No. I added spicy shrimp to it. I recommend that. I would go, if you're in Vegas, go check it out at Momofuku. That was phenomenal. That restaurant for me is like an 8 out of 10.
Can I tell you
really
a similar
fantastic
story that's kind of funny from yesterday? So yesterday I did my taxes.
Nice.
Which takes like an unreasonable amount
It takes you longer
than
it takes me. Yeah. It took me 10 minutes.
Yeah. So I ordered Indian food yesterday for lunch because I have Indian food like once a month.
Yeah.
And I got
somehow survived.
Yeah. And I got like halfway through And I'm like, that Indian food was actually pretty good. And I kind of deserve this because taxes suck. So I ordered Indian food twice in one day.
Look
I
at you.
I'll have to wait until May to have it again. But look.
At least I didn't get truffle ramen twice in one meal.
Yeah.
I just ordered a second round of pork buns, which, you know.
You love to see it.
And then I went to Milk Bar afterwards. It was a large meal.
That area of that area
That's
of
Cosmo.
Cosmo is pretty sweet.
Yeah. I went like the pork belly buns appetizer, truffle ramen, more pork belly buns, and then I got a birthday cake shake and a cookie at Milk Bar. And I deserved it. Here's the funny thing. So I told you I was going to tell you this story. So I'm sitting there at the bar at Momofuku, and a couple, they're about 50 years old or so, sitting kitty corner to me. And for no joke, the entire hour of the meal, they talked about the food they were eating. They took 45 pictures of it. They were talking about the taste they were tasting.
Nice.
They were guessing ingredients. At one point, the guy said, "I wonder what Dave Chang was thinking when he was concocting this dish." Then proceeded to ask if they thought Dave Chang might be in the restaurant that day. And I mean, I'm
Sounds
sitting
like
there
a
by
huge
myself.
privilege to me.
I'm sitting there by myself, and I'm just like, that's one of my pet peeves, and I'll never be that person. So, anyways, I just had to tell you that story.
So what's more objectionable to you? The humanizing of the because I don't think humanizing the chef is all that bad.
Mention the chef once. Don't ask if he's in the restaurant.
Yeah. Don't ask like what he's doing at that time.
Yeah.
Because like who knows? But also the food, like, and like, look, I have plenty of friends who food selfie all the time. But the first time you're out to eat with somebody who you think is cool, and then they food selfie, and you're like,
what's a food selfie?
well, like this, like take the food and then like they.
But a selfie is you in it.
But it's your food. Okay, so sorry.
They
take a picture of the food, and
Yeah.
I call it a food selfie. Okay,
well,
whatever.
send those people directly to jail, not pass go or collect $200.
But like, I just remember like, oh, so we're taking pictures of our food now. Like,
Look, there's no problem with taking pictures of your food if it's like an amazing looking dish and you want to remember a meal. Don't fucking put it on Instagram. I don't care. Okay, I don't care. Sorry.
I don't like.
Unless if it's truly amazing.
But what is truly amazing? It's like the beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
If it is one of the best meals that you've had, then I want to know about it, okay? And then share it. Let me know. But if it's just some average bullshit, like, don't.
Just save it.
Just tell me it's great. Just,
Right.
Anyways,
I feel I hear you, man. But like, it's tricky though, right? Like it's tricky because you're like,
it's not that hard.
Yeah.
It's also not that hard. I'm assuming these people were married. Just have a conversation about normal shit. Don't talk about the food the entire
I don't know,
time.
man. I feel like well, I hope at 55 I have as much shit to talk about as I do at 35.
You have a lot of shit to talk about. Anyways, that was our podcast. Thank you for being a member of the syndicate. We love you all. We'll be back on Wednesday. Peace out.